welcome or welcome back. Today's video is going to be quite long from what I can tell. Grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, do what you need to do. If you're new here, my name's Anna. I'm a clinical psychology doctoral intern, and today we're going to be talking about the research behind the ideal partner, what people say their ideal partner is, and whether they actually follow through with selecting those partners as their mates. Initially, when I was looking at the research, I was going to make it like short and simple, just, 5 things people look for in an ideal partner. But the deeper I got into the research, the more it became apparent that there was actually some tea there. There was a little bit of beef in between a few of the researchers. So I thought that was pretty funny. We always hear about drama between like YouTubers and things of the sort. And this just proves that, academics and researchers, they have beef too. They do clapbacks in their studies. They're not so different from YouTubers. So first we're going to talk about what people say they want in an ideal partner. Then we're going to talk about whether they actually select partners who they say are their ideal partner. I'm going to give my personal perspective on it because the research is contradictory. And then we're going to wrap it up with just why we want to learn about this topic and some real life applications. Part 1. What do people say they look for in a partner? Before we get into answering this question, I think it would be interesting to see what you all view as your ideal partner. So before you actually hear what the research says, I encourage you, if you feel comfortable, put down in the comments below what your ideal partner looks like. I think that would be super interesting to see after you hear the findings. Something that is very well established in the research is that people say they want a partner who is similar to them in personality, as well as other things such as socioeconomic status, race, religion. But contrary to popular belief, opposites do not attract. It very much makes sense in terms of personality that people with similar personalities would end up together. If you think about, for instance, someone who is introverted with someone who's extroverted, maybe the introvert wants to stay in and just hang out the two of them on weekends versus the extrovert wants to constantly be out, going to parties, socializing with people. You can see how an incompatibility could form there. Let's say that someone is high in conscientiousness and one person is low in conscientiousness. That can also cause issues as well if one person's super perfectionistic and diligent and prudent and the other person is kind of lagging. It can lead to this overfunction or underfunctioner dynamic. Hi, baby. No. So this is why Chianti, no. She's so spoiled. Well, this is why people with personality disorders often end up together as well. Research shows that people with similar personalities do tend to have happier and more stable relationships long term. Having a similar partner can make for a smooth relationship. It can provide self-validation because, it's like looking in a mirror. You see someone with a similar personality who you love, therefore it makes it easier to love yourself. And it fosters mutual liking because we are inherently pretty narcissistic people who enjoy people that are more like us. Interestingly, there was a study from 2020 which showed that people with higher core self-evaluation tend to want a more similar partner than people in low core self-evaluation. CSE has 4 components: self-esteem, generalized self-efficacy, emotional stability, and locus of control. It's kind of like what we would call self-worth or maybe self-esteem, an adjacent concept to that. It's how people appraise their self-worth, competence, and capabilities. People higher in CSE tend to have better outcomes in terms of job performance, popularity, psychological and physical health, income, and they set more challenging and fulfilling goals for themselves. So why does this happen? Why are people higher in CSE more drawn to people who are similar to them? Because people with low self-worth don't value the attributes that they hold as much. Like if you're introverted and you don't like yourself, understandably, you're going to be more drawn towards someone who's extroverted than if you're introverted and you appreciate that about yourself. But things get more interesting because it's not just that we're more drawn to people who are similar to us. Sometimes we're more drawn to people who are better than us. Better than us in terms of socially desirable traits in particular. So there are 2 sort of hypotheses in the research about whether or not we choose similar partners. One is the similarity preference hypothesis, which says that we choose people who are similar to us because it gives us validation for our beliefs, it provides self-affirmation, it reflects our own narcissism. The more important traits to be similar on in relationships tend to be the ones that reflect values, because as we know, couples who have shared values tend to fare better in their outcomes than couples who are different in their values. So value system is typically more important than personality traits, but when those personality traits reflect underlying values, then that's important for the relationship outcome. That's one of the hypotheses, is the similarity hypothesis. But then there's also the aspirational preference hypothesis, which says that we actually want someone who's better than us in some way because we have more to gain from it. So let's say that you are low in honesty, humility, and you want someone who's higher in honesty, humility, because that is a trait that you value, that you wish maybe you were a little bit better at. Then ostensibly you see someone who is higher in honesty, humility than you, and you're more attracted to them, even though they're not necessarily similar to you in their personality. So there was one study that actually put these two hypotheses against each other and said, which one is it? Are people drawn to someone who's similar to them or someone who is better than them? And the results supported both hypotheses. For all of the studies that they looked at, there was a similarity preference. People preferred someone who was similar in personality to them. And for all of the self-reported studies, there was also aspirational preference as well. It was particularly important for people to want to be with someone who is similar to them in terms of honesty, humility, and openness to experience, moderately so for agreeableness and conscientiousness, and this was less pronounced for emotionality and extroversion. And people preferred their partner to be better than them, so to speak, in these traits in terms of emotionality, extroversion, and agreeableness. This was moderate for honesty, humility, and inconsistent for conscientiousness. It reinforces the sad truth that in our society there definitely is a right personality to have and a less desired personality to have, and depending on what your personality is, that could make things difficult in terms of dating. But there's further research that looks beyond just similarity of traits, that looks at what are the traits that people overwhelmingly as a group tend to prefer in an ideal partner. There was a big meta-analysis done in 2014, a study that I really love, which showed that people want a partner who is both attractive and well off financially. Evolutionary psychology came out with this theory back in the 80s, particularly David Buss, one of the founding fathers of evolutionary psychology, that men want a female partner who is attractive and women want a male partner who is financially secure. This meta-analysis showed that regardless of what people say they want, what they actually end up choosing is someone who, regardless of gender, is both attractive and financially secure. Men and women didn't differ in terms of this. This meta-analysis looked at participant numbers in the tens of thousands, and it showed that physical attractiveness predicted romantic evaluations with a moderate to strong effect size for both sexes, and earning prospects predicted romantic evaluations with a small effect size for both sexes. Sex differences were small and uniformly non-significant. Why do people want a more attractive partner? Of course, evolutionarily, we evolved to want attractive partners so that it would benefit our offspring, better chances of our offspring surviving, because typically beauty is supposed to be associated with health and longevity, which unconsciously sends us the message that, okay, this is a healthy person, therefore this is an attractive person, therefore they're going to help my children survive, so I want to lock that down. Also, I think evolutionary psychology completely ignores the fact that having a beautiful partner gives you some amount of social status. It's why people with attractive partners get hit on more often than when they were single. It's why when someone has a beautiful ex, it tends to bring on more prospective beautiful partners, because people see that they're with somebody attractive and they think, okay, this person has clout, this person has social status, I'm more drawn to them now. I'm pretty sure there's a Seinfeld episode about that. The importance of attractiveness was moderated by relationship stage, so it was most important in the very early stages, sort of before you're starting to date, and in the later stages because, a lot of people in relationships, once they're in it, they kind of don't keep up their appearance as much, and so it's easy for people to fall off that attractiveness to become more companions rather than actually be romantically and physically attracted to each other. It was kind of a U-shaped curve where attractiveness is super important in the early stages and the later stages of dating. And why do people want someone who is financially secure? Again, the evolutionary psychology reason would say that it's because you want to make sure that your offspring survives. Personally, I think it's less to do with what we used to do as cavemen thousands of years ago and more to do with the modern day advantages of having a financially secure partner. People do things that would be against evolution all the time. People have eating disorders, substance abuse problems. I don't think it's necessarily about our evolutionary adaptation as much as it is about the fact that people want someone who can take them on a nice date, who can afford to start a family or build a house or not bog them down with debt. Unfortunately, this is the way a lot of people think in the world. And also, something that calls into question the evolutionary psychology theory is that men and women tend to vary less in the type of partner they say they want in nations where there is greater gender equality. This meta-analysis also found that over time, so like across the decades, people tend to be placing less and less emphasis on attractiveness and more emphasis on earning prospects. This certainly makes sense when we think about like economic instability and just how much it costs to survive in this world. Another thing that people look for in a partner is confidence humor. Why confidence? Because it signals to us that the other person values themselves, and therefore if they value themselves, it must be that we have something to appreciate about them as well, so therefore we value them higher as well. Insecurity is honestly one of the biggest turnoffs for people, and I know this is difficult for people to hear who have low self-esteem or anxiety issues or are going through some stuff. But unfortunately, I think the stereotype rings true that insecurity or low confidence does not bode well for attraction. As for why humor is important for a potential partner to have, it's because it just makes life lighter, brighter, happier, more tolerable. It's sometimes surprising and even inappropriate or transgressive in a way that can be really attractive to people. Before meeting my partner, I never would have said that I look for humor in a person. I was brought up in a family that was relatively serious, where jokes were kind of behaviorally punished a little bit, where it would be met with, what do you mean by that? Or that's not funny, or that's inappropriate, things along those lines. Not everyone in my family, some people are funny, but that was definitely the message that I got growing up. And so I didn't realize until years into my relationship how important it was to have a funny partner. What was going on around that time was I had a canker sore in my mouth, so I couldn't laugh because it was so painful. And I realized that week that my partner was making me laugh all the time. And I realized that he's actually really funny, and I was completely underestimating how much light it brings to my life. Now, something else really interesting that people say they want in a partner. I noticed there's a similarity in a lot of the traits they were naming. People were saying the things they want most from a partner is that this person is supportive, a good listener, kind, responsive to their needs, considerate. A different study said they want someone who's trustworthy, reliable, understanding. A different study said they wanted someone who is responsive, dependable, and trustworthy, friendly, and nice. And I started to realize these most prized traits were very self-focused. It was very much, I want someone who's not going to threaten my self-esteem. People ultimately, what they say they want from a partner is someone who is not going to question or hurt them. Now, there are two ways to sort of look at this, right? One side is, I want someone who's not going to hurt me because maybe I've been hurt in the past. Completely understandable. I think we can all have compassion for that. But another way to look at the same situation is you don't want someone to question you or to challenge you in any way. A lot of these descriptions of the ideal partner are frankly quite selfish, maybe even narcissistic. But does this actually get followed through with? As we'll get to in a second, so just hold on a minute because we'll get to the good part. I'm sure many of us know someone who's in a relationship with someone who treats them really poorly, so what people say they want often doesn't match what they end up with. Now, it's well established in the research that warmth and trustworthiness, another trait, is very important for people in their ideal partner. Warmth and trustworthiness has been shown to trump pretty much any other trait under the sun. People see it as a necessity rather than a luxury. Kind and understanding is consistently rated as the most desirable trait in a potential partner. And people with higher rates of warmth and trustworthiness have greater marriage satisfaction, lower levels of infidelity, condescension, self-centeredness, and spousal abuse. They're also more cooperative partners and better parents. Why? Because warmth helps us form those social bonds. It helps keep us together. It allows us to feel safe with another person, to feel like they feel goodwill towards us, and we in turn feel goodwill towards them. Again, back to that narcissism, we want someone who likes us. Even as a child, I remember warmth was very, very important to me, to the point where if I was faced with someone that wasn't very facially expressive, that signaled low warmth to me, that wasn't smiling a lot, or actually was giving me the sense that maybe they were a little bit cold or rough around the edges, I didn't really feel comfortable interacting with them versus those people that were constantly smiling, that just their face brightened you on the inside. I felt much more comfortable with those people. And even though I struggle sometimes with facial expressions just because of completely different topic, I think that has continued to be a really important value for me, is being able to express warmth to people and to receive warmth in return. And it's important to find a prospective partner who's trustworthy, because if you don't have trust, what do you have? If you can't be sure that someone is going to get the type of milk that you want or not cheat on you with someone else, you can't really have a solid relationship. So it makes sense that people would say they want someone who's trustworthy. Contrary to popular belief, women and people in general do not want bad boys. So in summary, people say that they want someone who is similar in personality to them or better, attractive, financially secure, warm and trustworthy, confident and funny, and someone who is supportive, understanding, kind, sweet. In other words, someone who won't question them or hurt them. Does this actually result in people who match their stated ideals? Or do people not really understand what they actually want in a partner? Part 2. Do people actually end up with their ideal partner? So if these findings have you feeling deflated, you hear this and you go, well shit, I don't have any of these traits. There's some good news. Despite how people will talk your ear off about their ideal partner, and I've certainly been guilty of this myself, research is contradictory on whether or not people actually end up with someone who meets their ideals. There's this model in relationship research called the intersection model of pair relatedness, which says that there are basically 3 stages in ending up in a relationship. There's the awareness stage, where 2 people are forming impressions of each other, but they don't yet have an interaction. Then there's the surface contact, where they are superficially interacting and exchanging some information with each other. And then the 3rd stage is mutuality, where they're closer and they're in a mutually recognized relationship. In order for 2 people to end up together successfully, they have to move through all 3 of these stages. And all 3 of these stages are also 3 different spots where people can do research on this topic. But like I said, there's mixed evidence. There's evidence that people do actually pursue and end up with their ideal partner, and evidence that they don't actually end up with the person that they want. So starting with the evidence that shows people do end up with the people they say they want. One study from 2020 showed that people who prefer warmth and trustworthiness are actually attracted to more warm, trustworthy mates in a live mate selection context, and then this compatibility predicts actual satisfaction in marriages. A different study from 2016 looked at whether ideals predict partner selection in the relationship formation stage, so around 5 months. So they actually recruited single participants, assessed their ideal preferences, tracked their relationship status over the course of 5 months, and then recruited their partners as well to get their own self-report. And these findings showed that people do seem to end up with those that match their ideals, but it doesn't confirm whether it's due to other factors. It just provides some initial evidence that people do tend to enter new relationships with others possessing traits that more closely correspond to their own ideal preferences. But there's also some evidence that people don't end up with who they actually say they want. So the 2014 meta-analysis that I spoke about has an answer to this question that basically says, not really. Like I said, this meta-analysis showed no sex differences in preference for physical attractiveness and earning prospects. It also claimed that single people are more attracted to hypothetical partners who more closely match their preferences, but their preferences don't actually predict single people's attraction to potential partners, and therefore the conclusion that this meta-analysis made was that partner preferences don't mean a person is actually going to prefer or pursue or desire their ideal partner. Then a study from 2019 investigated whether partner preferences actually guide mating decisions, again across a 5-month period into relationship formation. And they found that preferences are relatively stable over time, but less so for people that entered a relationship. People tended to adjust their preference towards their partner's traits when their partner did not live up to their ideals. They didn't do this if their partner exceeded their ideals, but this was really interesting. When their partner fell short of their expectations, they adjusted their expectations down to basically convince themselves, no, this is my ideal partner. Yeah, this is them. This is my ideal partner. Yeah. In 2008, there was also a speed dating study which showed no link between stated partner preferences and evaluations of potential mates, which again said that there was not really a correlation between what people said they wanted and who they were actually drawn to in a speed dating paradigm. And in 2019, there was another study that said even if people do end up with their ideal partner, it's not necessarily because they pursued and selected and desired this person. They actually give 6 possible alternative explanations for why you could end up with your ideal partner without actually seeking out someone who's in line with your ideals. Another conclusion of the meta-analysis from 2014 has implications for online dating, which basically say that the way dating apps are created don't really allow people to find or identify their ideal partner and therefore end up with them. And they recommend that dating apps which encourage face-to-face meetings are probably the best for finding such a person, which is why I think it's so important for people, even when they are on the apps, to get off of the apps quickly and to actually meet in person with the person that they matched with so that they can actually assess face-to-face, does this person have the traits that I'm looking for? So what happens when people end up with someone who doesn't live up to their ideals? One thing is that they end up in unhappier relationships. When they realize that their partner doesn't live up to their expectations, they experience more dejected emotions. And when they realize that they don't live up to their partner's expectations, they have more agitated emotions. This makes sense. I mean, think about it. If your partner disappoints you, you're probably going to feel a little bit dejected because this is the person you've chosen to be with, and yet they're not really living up to your expectations. Versus if your partner tells you that you're not living up to their expectations, it's more adaptive for you to get a little bit agitated and to get that energy spurt to actually change yourself, to mold yourself more to what they want. So that's one thing, is people are unhappier when they're in relationships with someone that doesn't meet their expectations. Also, people tend to try to motivate their partners to change in the direction that they want. So let's say that you're an extrovert with someone introverted. You don't like that they just want to hang out at home all the time. You might try to force them to be more extroverted. And also, like I said, people adjust their ideals down. They're essentially convincing themselves that this is their ideal partner when really it's not consistent with what they said they wanted. So what do we make of this discrepancy in the research? When I really sat down and paid attention to the names of the researchers who are doing these studies, I realized there's been a squabble in between some of the researchers on this topic. So let me give you a timeline. Let me set the stage for the beef that's about to come. In the 1980s, there was a lot of research, most of it by David Buss, showing that there are sex differences in preferences, that men say they want an attractive woman, women say that they want a rich man. And he viewed this through an evolutionary psychology lens. And when I looked at David Buss and who he is, apparently he is one of the founding fathers of evolutionary psychology. He has over 200 published research articles. He's written several books. He's been on Jordan Peterson's channel, which is what it is. But I will say, I tried to figure out what this guy is like, and based on a lot of the articles and the podcasts that he was putting out, it seems like he genuinely cares about understanding and preventing male violence against women from an evolutionary psychology lens, so he seems like a good guy. I do want to make a video on evolutionary psychology, but that's going to take a while, kind of like this one, because I want to look at both sides of the argument to make sure that I'm being fair, to make sure that there's not an argument that I'm missing, and after I do that, I will tell you what conclusion I came to. So that was in the 1980s. Lots of evolutionary psychology research on particularly sex differences in their ideals. And in 2000, Fletcher, Simpson, and Thomas found that individuals in existing relationships changed their expectations to fit their partner's characteristics. And then in 2001, the same Simpson and Fletcher and someone called Campbell came up with the ideal standards model. So the whole model that all this research, or pretty much all this research, is based upon. Remember the name Campbell, because this is going to come back. Specifically, remember that Campbell is one of the people that came up with the ideal standards model. Then in 2008, someone called Eastwick and Finkel come into the scene with a study on speed dating that found no link between people's stated partner preferences and their evaluations of potential mates. So basically, they suggested that individuals lack the introspective awareness of what influences their actual mate choice. Again, remember the name Eastwick because this is going to be relevant later. So remember that Eastwick is someone who seems to be starting to suspect that the ideal standards model may not be based on a very sturdy foundation. In 2014, Eastwick, Lucis, Finkel, and Hunt come out with this meta-analysis that I've spoken about a lot in this video, where they seriously call into question the idea that people actually end up with their ideal partner. So we get another point for Eastwick here. And it seriously calls into question a lot of David Buss's research and the whole underpinning of evolutionary psychology. That same year, Campbell and Stanton, remember Campbell is one of the people that created the ideal standards model, published a criticism piece of the above meta-analysis in which they explained that the meta-analysis lacked studies that looked at the relationship formation stage, meaning only 3% of the studies the meta-analysis looked at was in that relationship formation stage, and claims that there is no strong evidence to suggest people don't actually pursue their ideal partner. In 2016, Campbell, Chin, and Stanton aimed to bridge this gap that they pointed out in the meta-analysis by looking at whether ideals predict partner selection in the relationship formation stage, so around 5 months, and they find that people do seem to end up with those that match their ideals, but it doesn't confirm whether this is due to other factors like I mentioned. And in 2019, Gerlach, Schultz, Reinhardt, and Penke also investigate whether partner preferences actually guide mating decisions across a 5-month period into relationship formation, and they find that preferences are relatively stable, but less so for people that entered a relationship where people adjusted down when their partner fell short. It's interesting, it's almost like a replication of the 2016 study by Campbell, Chin, and Stanton, except it kind of contradicts the point they were making a little bit. And then in 2019, Eastwick comes back with another criticism piece along with Finkel and Simpson, in which they point out that recent articles have incorrectly suggested that a correlation between ideal partner preferences and traits of a current or potential partner implies people actually selected those that match their ideals. They provided 6 alternate explanations for why people might end up with their ideal partner that does not include they actually pursued that partner. And in their article, they mention 3 studies that they call out for making incorrect assumptions. What do you know? That list includes Campbell and Stanton, the 2 researchers who called out Eastwick and Finkel's meta-analysis 3 years prior. It also includes Buss, the evolutionary psychology guy. So in summary, the research is mixed, but I just thought it was kind of hilarious how this timeline shows the back and forth between Russ, Campbell, and Eastwick. But what do we actually make of this contradiction in the research? I would like to humbly provide my own anecdotal experience. Part 3, a clinical critique of this body of research. I will say I thought about this and it seemed like both Eastwick and Campbell have a point. However, I'm tempted to agree with Eastwick that people don't actually understand what they want in a partner, for the very simple reason that I have eyes and ears and I have seen this firsthand so many times. How many people end up in atrociously incompatible relationships where it's clear that this person does not meet their expectations. As a clinician, obviously I hear a lot of people who, despite their stated preferences for a partner, end up with someone who does not match up and probably doesn't treat them very well either. In fact, a very common intervention that I use with such clients is to ask them what they're looking for in a partner, essentially their ideal partner, as a way to sort of highlight how discrepant their current partner is. But is it just selection bias? Because, it could be that people who are unhappy with their relationship because there are discrepancies end up in therapy more because they're distressed as a result of it. So in a way, isn't this further proof that people whose expectations are not met by their partner are in greater distress and have worse outcomes? No, because I also see this in my personal life. I don't just see this in clinical work. I also see it with everyone else around me who ends up in terrible relationships where people do not live up to their expectations. So I have a few theories on why this happens, on why people end up with partners who do not match their ideals. One explanation is that what people consciously say they want and what they unconsciously need can be 2 very different things. Let's say that you say on paper, I want someone who's kind, who's trustworthy, who's warm, but you end up with someone who is emotionally abusive, let's say. It might be that in childhood you had a parent who was like that, and now you're trying to correct that experience unconsciously by doing it over with someone else who is like your parent. So consciously you could say, I want someone who treats me well, but unconsciously the choices you are making are in contradiction to that. Another reason why this happens is that people are willing to make exceptions for someone they really like. Again, coming back to this idea that partner preferences of those that entered a relationship appeared to be less stable than preferences of those that stayed single, meaning people modified their ideal partner to more closely match their partner who wasn't matching up. There are a lot of reasons why people would do this. For one, you invest in relationships. People have the sunk cost fallacy. They don't want to have to give up the home, split up their belongings, divorce, figure out custody of the kids if they have built a life with this person who turns out is not their ideal partner. Or sometimes people just really like someone or are attracted to someone and they're willing to overlook the fact that this isn't the person they actually wanted. So they might actually convince themselves that this person meets their ideals when really they don't. For instance, my partner was saying that somebody he knows kept talking about how hot his wife was. And when my partner actually met his wife, he said it was discrepant with what he believed to be true. Obviously, it's really sweet that this guy thought his wife was hot. And who knows, maybe to him, she was like the hottest woman in the world and, she perfectly lives up to his ideals. But is it possible that what happened instead was this person adjusted their ideals to better fit the person that they love? Or another example is, why do people end up in abusive relationships when they convince themselves that this person is kind, that this person treats them well, that they have good intentions? Because some level of denial is necessary if you want to stay with someone that doesn't match your expectations. And lastly, people might not have access to their ideal partner, either because they are not desired by their ideal partner or because there's just no access. Maybe their ideal partner isn't that available, is someone with really high ideals that doesn't exist just around the corner. Even if preferences might be predictive of whom individuals pursue as a romantic partner, the inherent mutuality of mate choice and the basic availability of persons that one is interested in may limit preferences' capacity to predict actual relationship formation. And lastly, part 4. Why do we so badly want to understand the ideal partner? So the question arises, can we really trust what people say when they say, this is who I want to be with, this is my ideal partner? Even if you are somebody's perfect partner on paper, it might not be that they're actually interested in you or will end up with you. And if they do end up with you, it might not be because you are their ideal partner. It could be for 6 other different reasons. So does it really matter what people say their ideal partner is? I think the reason this is such a hot topic in the research, why you clicked on this video, is because we so badly want to have a magic formula that guarantees this is how you get love. This is how you find a partner. This is how you get romantic acceptance. The truth is, there is no magic formula. Human behavior is pretty unpredictable, and what people say they want doesn't always end up showing through their actions that they want. So even if you twist yourself into a pretzel trying to be what somebody else needs, it might not be what they want, and it might not be you that they want if you've changed yourself so much. So what can you do instead? You can find someone who's a good fit for you just the way you are. You don't have to change yourself. You can get into hobbies to improve your chances of ending up with someone who's similar to you, to improve your chances of finding people who are similar in their personalities and their values and their hobbies. You can constantly be working to improve yourself, to be more aligned with your values rather than some mythical person that you want to be with. If you actually do want to be a more desirable partner, you can do things like you can work on your attractiveness, you can work on being financially secure, you can try to go to therapy so that you are more trustworthy and confident and warm. But rest assured that when someone really likes you, they are going to overlook your flaws, because when someone loves another person, they adjust their expectations down. They say, this is the person I want. This is my ideal person. It doesn't matter that they don't meet everything that I said I wanted. In some ways, it's better to get someone that's not exactly what you wanted because they challenge you. They help you grow into a better person. So I hope that there's a silver lining to all this research that I looked at today. That was a long video, and it took me a long time to script. So if you liked this, if you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up, comment what your thoughts are. I really hope that it was helpful, and I hope to do more videos like this where it's kind of a broad lit review, deep dive type of thing, but it is time consuming, so it might take a month or 2 before the next one like this. Hope you have a great day. See you soon.